In my world, well, you could say I was the end-all be-all. The whole idea of, well, once creation comes, destruction must come before, is a true statement. I am destruction itself. I keep this universe tame. My name is Naofumi Iwatani, and I am the god of destruction for my universe. I personally see fit to this entire universe and make sure that everything is correct in the world. You can call me whatever you want. A destruction god, definitely no hero. You can basically call me neutral. But at the end of the day, I am what comes before creation, and that is destruction itself. Naofumi Iwatani. That is the name of the legendary destruction hero. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me. And I am back. I'm back with a brand new Naofumi What If. What if Naofumi was the legendary destruction hero? Obviously, this is going to be a bit different than any of my other Naofumi What Ifs, and the starting of this video has already told you that. But with that said, I'm not going to waste any more of your time, and let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. Naofumi Iwatani and his assistant, or angel assistant, by the name of Angelina, basically begins to just search the universe over and over, scouting it out for any, well, you can call them detriments to their mortal level. They continue this over and over for a while, until they stumble across this odd-looking world. They approach it and begin speaking with the inhabitants. The inhabitants begin to talk about everything they do to make their world a better place, and help any other planets that come here, or any people from other planets that come here as well. They begin reading through a large novel, but during this, it seems as if this large novel begins to glow this odd color. Naofumi looks at his angel assistant, but she shrugs her shoulders, not knowing what's happening either, as they're both transported away. They immediately arrive in this odd-looking place, Naofumi sitting crisscross on the ground as his angel attendant is standing next to him. He looks to his left in confusion, looking to see that there are 3 other people with them. It seems like one has a bow, one has a spear, and another has a sword. Naofumi doesn't exactly know what's happening, and even asks Angelina what is occurring. She begins to say that it seems like there has been interdimensional travel of some sort, that this world seems far bit different, and immediately one of the heroes on the left of Naofumi, by the name of Motoyasu, walks over to Angelina and tries to spit a pickup line toward her, in which she moves away from him and tells him not to get in too close vicinity with her. That he or that she, well, will have to take evasive measures, and, well, Naofumi himself, the one next to him, won't really like that very much. Naofumi stands up and says that he would agree with that statement, that he probably should watch his step, especially around her, and that you won't want to piss off a god. And the other 3 laugh at him, thinking that he's kidding. There's no way he's a god, that makes no sense. And Naofumi just shrugs and says that, well, it's their loss for thinking otherwise. As he begins to say this, knights approach the cage-like, well, area that they're in, and begin to say that the king of Melremark wants to speak with them. When they all arrive in the throne room, the king begins to speak with all 4 of them, but looking to see that there is no shield hero. He's quite happy to hear this, but looks at Naofumi, seeing that he is different. He's actually standing with another woman, and he says that the woman needs to go now, but she disagrees, saying that she is with Mr. Naofumi, or the god of destruction himself. And, well, the king finds this ridiculous. The god of destruction, there is no such thing, that they should get out immediately. In which Naofumi yawns a bit and then walks out with Angelina. Angelina says that maybe they should have stayed a little bit longer to maybe get some currency that they speak of in this world, but Naofumi says that it doesn't matter to him. He'll figure everything out on his own, in which Angelina rolls her eyes, saying that it's more like she will figure out everything on her own. In which Naofumi laughs a bit and says that she has always been a great help in all of his expeditions, in which she says yes, that she understands. It seems like both of them are somewhat linked to a certain extent. It seems like Angelina can actually not hurt anybody physically or fight for Naofumi, but the gem that Naofumi would have had on a special weapon or a legendary weapon is actually within the staff that Angelina is holding. It seems like that all holds the power to his God of Destruction mode, but it also seems that his power is extremely limited, at least at the moment. He figures out, or more like she figures out, that there is a leveling system in this world. He sees that he's level 1, and it's basically as if he was starting out from his training as normal. But Angelina says that it's actually pretty simple when you think about it, that if he power levels and kills things as quick as possible, well, you can just say that he'll be back to his former glory in a matter of days, if used properly. But she does say that he is very vulnerable at the moment, so the clothing he's wearing, which is just his God of Destruction clothing, is probably not the best idea. So they decide to head and see if they can get him some new clothing, but without money, it makes it very difficult. He meets with someone by the name of Elhard, speaking with him, and he says that he can definitely give Naofumi something on a loan, as long as he can bring him back something valuable or worth it, in which he does bring up the fact that he can go to Loot Village. He's heard of something very, very interesting from Loot Village, that there is mines over there with very valuable ore, and they can pay back, well, Elhard like it's nothing. In which he does explain that he is a little weak at the moment, so he might want to be careful in terms of going there, at least not yet. Maybe head over in a day or two after leveling a bit. Naofumi says that's fine with him, so he heads out with Angelina to the wilderness to fight some newbie-like monsters. Naofumi tries to use any powers he's had in his past world, or universe of some sorts, or really dimension if you want to call it that, but nothing is exactly working, in which Angelina informs him that everything's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be a process to get him to the skill and strength he was at before, but the current strength he's at now should be able to hand monsters roughly 20 times his level, in which he's kind of shocked by this, but she does remind him that he's level 1, so it's more like he can handle monsters at level 20, and he won't be able to handle level 100s at level 5. It's just a scale at the moment. He kind of gets mad, saying that she got his hopes up, that maybe he wouldn't have to train so much, but she says that, yeah, definitely she believes otherwise, that he's going to have to continue his training and leveling up to a certain extent. And also, probably get some party members. Frankly, they did leave without even trying to get a party member, in which Naofumi even states that, well, they kind of threw him out anyways, but Angelina does remark that he didn't even try, and Naofumi says that he gets that, but he's not going to try with people that are going to act like he is nothing or nothingness when he is a god. So he begins to basically run through the forest, killing monster after monster relatively easily, sending his hand through every single monster, and then eventually at the level of 5 he learns how to use Ki Blasts, or, well, not learns per se, but at least now he can use Ki Blasts. A simple actual blast, he's actually kind of annoyed, because normally he'd be able to just Hakai anything away he wants to see destroyed, but he actually just can't do that. Ki Blasts, of course, are beneficial, and he can actually use some of his own techniques, But other than that, he can't really use much of it. He can use his God of Destruction's wrath, in which he screams loudly and sends ki blasts everywhere, but frankly even that isn't as beneficial without the, well, ki of the gods and also his destruction-like mode. But even with that said, he has a fruitful way of training, getting up to a level of 15 to level 20 very quickly in a matter of a day. Especially with Angelina analyzing everything that's going on, it makes it very easy for Naofumi to level up and get stronger and stronger, in which he's actually able to uncap his power slowly but surely, getting 10% of his original strength, at least for now. It seems like he still has to unlock a couple things until he can uncap about 50%, but even 10% is extremely powerful. Using 10% of his destructive power is far more than enough than he possibly would need for a while. But Angelina does tell him that getting party members is very useful, and that they definitely should think about doing so. As they're walking through underneath this small bridge, a bunch of people, actually 3 to 4 of them, approach him, and they're a bunch of bandits. But the bandits begin to threaten Naofumi, saying that they want his money right now, in which Naofumi looks at Angelina, and Angelina slightly shrugs as Naofumi puts out his hand and says Hakai. But as he does this, only one of them disappears, and he gets kind of frustrated. The fact that he can't Hakai all of them together is kind of annoying. Flicking his finger as multiple ki blasts begin flying out, going through their bodies, killing them instantly as they vaporize into nothingness. Naofumi gaining about a level from this, saying that the monsters in the forest were even stronger than them. But as he says this to himself, he hears clapping coming from behind him, in which Angelina turns around, and so does Naofumi. He sees someone that is known as the slave market owner, in which he says that he's heard that Naofumi needs, you could say, some partners, some people in his party, and Naofumi says that yes, he definitely does, but he doesn't have any money, and frankly, he doesn't feel like paying anything. In which the slave market owner says that that's just fine, and at least come and check it out. So Naofumi does just that, looking around, seeing various monsters, some monsters actually of extremely high level, and he offers to actually give him one of these monsters for free, but he's going to have to choose one of the lower end monsters, in which Angelina walks around and begins looking through the monsters and begins to think about who has the most potential, thinking that a being that is coherent and actually has intelligence would be a lot more beneficial to them personally, and she points at a small little girl, in which Naofumi is confused that this little girl, she's sick, and it seems like she's actually part quote-unquote monster. But Angelina says that she is actually part raccoon, it seems, of some sort at least. Raccoon ears, maybe a raccoon tail, something like that. And that she can be definitely can have great potential. In which the slave market owner kind of disagrees, saying that she's sicker than a dog, but Angelina says that that's truly no problem and they'll take her. In which he offers a slave crest, but there is no slave crest when you are a god. That you don't need someone else to make sure that they stay in line, that he'll make sure she does stay in line, and becomes a loyal servant or a loyal party member to Master Naofumi. In which Angelina says this, and they all walk out. The little girl is terrified as Angelina picks her up and carries her along, saying that they're gonna get her medicine and she'll feel all better. In which Naofumi remarks that it seems like her angel, instincts are kind of being put away. It seems like she wants to be a mother, but Angelina obviously says that sounds ridiculous, that she has to take care of a child already. Looking at Naofumi as he just flicks his hand away and begins to walk toward this odd looking shop that maybe has some medicine. He's able to get this medicine and actually gets it via some trading of these disposed of monster pelts that he actually got. Getting the medicine, giving it to Raftalia, and they actually are able to cure her sickness relatively easily, in which he explains to her that she'll just be helping him out to level up and get stronger, and that soon she probably won't even have to fight. In which Angelina says that that is not a good thing to put in her head, that fighting is going to be part of her job, and that as herself, Angelina, the angel, cannot fight for her. And says that if she wants to make sure that she is truly protected, that she should make sure that she's strong, and that she will even train her to be strong as well. In which Angelina begins to train Raphtalia. Train her in martial arts, train her in anything, train her in everything. In which, obviously, Naofumi says that they could speed up the process by throwing her in the staff, in which Angelina thinks is a good idea, but at the same time doesn't know how her staff necessarily works at this moment. So, Naofumi decides that he'll go in first and then come out in about a couple minutes, or I guess in there would be about 30. He hops back in and begins training in there, and sees that it isn't too much different, but it does seem to be based off of level concentration. So when they put Raphtalia in, or Naofumi will have to go in with her to make sure that she doesn't panic and actually gets some levels out of it. This place in the staff has actually given them a proper area to train. Yes, they don't have monsters in there to level up with, which they're going to have to figure out in the long run. But with that said, maybe they can absorb a certain amount of monsters and they can use it as some sort of simulation. In which while Raphtalia and obviously Naofumi are in there, Angelina figures it out. After hearing what Naofumi is remarking, she actually begins to summon some small monsters in which they both train on. And this training is even more fruitful. It seems like being in the staff and leveling up within that said staff is giving them accelerated levels, making Raphtalia eventually hit the level of 15, and she is maturing at a rapid rate, being around the age of 15 to 16 already, because that is exactly how demi-humans work. With this all said though, he does have a debt to pay and decides to head over to Loot Village to sell anything he can, getting some small prices on certain items he has, and then heading off to this so-called cave he's heard of. When he arrives, he begins mining this ore and storing it into the staff that Angelina has. But during this time, something then appears. A two-headed dog monster begins to stare daggers into them, and he can see that Raphtalia is terrified, shaking, and does not want to fight, in which he does know he can defeat this monster with relative ease, but decides that Raphtalia needs to be the one to do it. Angelina even encourages her and says that if she can fight and beat this thing, that she can actually defeat it over and over again within the staff and take out all her anger out on this monster, in which this does drive her to actually defeat the monster, eventually gaining her a decent amount of experience points, being out at a level of 20. Naofumi at a level of about 28, Raphtalia about a level of 20, and obviously Angelina is technically at a level of 28, but she is more of a support character, you could call it, I guess. But with that said, they have a new monster completely absorbed in the staff, and on top of that, a high level one, so the training within the staff will actually be very beneficial. But Angelina does figure out that every single day there's a time limit on this. They can only spend about 4 hours within the staff, but luckily that only equates to about 30 minutes outside of the staff. But with that said, being that they can only have really good training 4 hours every single day, they do use that other time to either catch up on about 2 to 3 hours more of leveling up, or actually going around and scouting for new areas. But they always make sure to use those 4 hours of the day. Throughout this cycle of more or less just training, leveling up, gathering money, this and that, they have gathered a good reputation, at least from Loot Village, Elhard, and some people around Melremark. Others of the royal class don't really like him around, especially because they believe that he is, you could say, cocky, or thinks too highly of himself, but they also think of him as a false hero. He believes himself to be the god of destruction, in which he kind of rebrands to the legendary destruction hero, but he does like the idea of a god a little bit better, in which he does tell stories of this to Raphtalia after she kind of bugs him to tell him these said stories, but Angelina does follow up and explain the true stories of everything that would go on, in which Naofumi gets mad about, saying that he can live in whatever reality he wants to when he gets sent to a outer dimension like this. And Angelina just waves her hand and says that she understands that, but telling the girl false truths is not something they should be doing. After about a month of just doing all of this stuff, the preparation for the next wave is finally upon them, in which Naofumi heard about these so-called waves from like Elhard and Loot Village, in which now he kind of knows why he was summoned, but let's just say they're extremely strong. Naofumi at a level of 55 already, and Raphtalia at a level of 40 already. He actually does learn about this class upgrade system, so he'll have to go check that out before this next wave, but he does go and basically gets Raphtalia some proper armor for herself. Obviously, she's more of a hand-to-hand combat basically artist here, but Naofumi wants to make sure that she's safe in terms of armament, and then she'll be able to use any ki blasts, maybe hand-to-hand martial arts, and different various versions of God Ki. And Naofumi thanks Angelina for the first time in a while for the helpful training or the helpful leveling up for Raphtalia, in which Angelina remarks that it does seem like Naofumi is getting a little bit soft. And Naofumi rolls his eyes and says that, well, she also wanted to be a mother, so she can't really talk. And Naofumi walks away as Angelina argues that she never said that. But with that going on, they head to the capital's cathedral, and it's basically to the Dragon's Hourglass, in which they go to measure the waves. They check it out to see how long until the next wave, but then also speak with the people who are running this Dragon Hourglass, wanting to have a class upgrade, in which they refuse Naofumi and his party, or his singular person party, whatever. But even with that said, the other heroes walk in hearing this and are confused why they would refuse him, in which they say that only those three heroes can actually get their class upgrades, and they question Naofumi. How the heck did Raphtalia get so strong so quickly, and where did they even get her from? And he just explains that he saved her from a slave market. And Angelina nods, confirming this, that they technically did save her from that slave market, and it was a horrible place. So if they want to go raid that instead of, well, you know, doing whatever else they're doing, they should totally do that. In which the other three are shocked to hear that she is from a slave market. Itsuki and Ren, actually hearing this, want more information, saying that they should look into taking this down, but Motoyasu sees it as if Naofumi just admitted to having a slave. In which Naofumi, when hearing that Motoyasu criticized him about it, it doesn't really make sense to him. He even explains that she doesn't have no slave crest or anything like that, and she can leave whenever she wants, but Naofumi has given her a real purpose in terms of fighting off these so-called waves. With all that said, Naofumi begins to tell them that it's time for them to leave, and that he'll figure out a way to get Raphtalia that class upgrade some other time, and well, maybe they'll have to go to some other place that may or may not have the said hourglass they need. So they head off, in which Raphtalia is a bit frustrated not being able to get her class upgrade, but he promises that she's arguably already stronger than them. In which she looks at Angelina, and Angelina nods, saying that is definitely the case. They can just tell that these other people are not taking this as seriously as Naofumi is, in which Naofumi makes a question that maybe they didn't need to take it as seriously as they have, but Angelina reminds him that taking a job as the god of destruction is just as serious as taking the job as the destruction hero. And Naofumi nods, saying that he would agree to that, and he apologizes for questioning it, so they head off in wait of the wave to begin. The wave then begins, and he gets a notice on his screen in which he's teleported to where the wave starts. But during this time, he actually sees Loot Village being attacked, asking Raphtalia if she could go and handle that, and he will go fight the main boss. She nods and flies off, in which Naofumi looks at Angelina in shock, and she kind of shrugs, saying that she is a fast learner and flying was a basic step. And Naofumi says that he understands that, but she is flying at insane speeds, faster than he'd actually expected, in which Angelina responds that she is no longer a kid anymore, and it's pretty obvious that she is growing at a rapid rate. Naofumi then decides to head over with Angelina to this said main boss, seeing that the other heroes are actually handling this main boss pretty well, actually with relative ease, and they're able to actually almost defeat it. Naofumi then decides to step in, putting a hand on the boss and saying Hakai, immediately dispersing the boss. Being that he is a higher level than it seems that his Hakai has a success rate of 100%. Being able to defeat the boss in an instant, the other three heroes stare at him in shock, thinking that he must be cheating. How was he even able to do such a thing? Naofumi kinda shrugs and basically tells them that it's really not a matter of how or that he's cheating. Frankly, it's just part of his skill set as a god. And they immediately think that he just has an overinflated ego. Ironically enough, he kinda does in a way, but they have won massively over their capabilities. He then leaves, or Naofumi then leaves and meets up with Raphtalia once again, seeing that she handled everything there relatively easily. And Raphtalia is basically loved by the entire village, and Naofumi obviously explains and apologizes that he couldn't himself come and help, but luckily Raphtalia was with him and he was able to send her. They thank him again, especially because she is a party member of Naofumi, and that he truly showed that he is one of the heroes. He may not be a traditional hero in the sense, but he is definitely one of the heroes that were summoned, and there's no doubt about that. Naofumi then shrugs, saying that he appreciates the gesture, but other than that, it doesn't really matter too much. But after the wave of catastrophe, the other three heroes are actually treated to a state dinner, but they do decide to invite Naofumi and his party, or Naofumi, Angelina, and Raphtalia. So when they arrive, they begin eating food and enjoying it. Naofumi obviously is enjoying the food very much so. He hasn't had a really good meal in a little bit, in which Angelina takes offense to because she's been the one that's been cooking. Naofumi says that it's really no offense, it's just there's so much more variety here, they've been kinda broke. But with that said though, Motoyasu approaches Naofumi in a fit of rage, saying that those two that's with him are binded not by choice, and that he deserves to be punished and that he will do so in a duel. But Naofumi is confused at why he would even put himself in that situation. You know, if I so choose, I could kill you, correct? It's a duel to the death? No? And he says that it's not a duel to the death, it's a duel to whoever loses, and if that means death, then so be it. But the king disagrees, saying that they cannot lose one of the heroes, so he would basically refrain from killing. And as much as he hates to admit it, this Naofumi person did help a ton during the wave. Naofumi shrugs and says he'll take a duel however they want it, but frankly this is not going to be at least good for them. Immediately when they arrive at the area for their duel, Naofumi and Motoyasu begin to clash, but every single attack Motoyasu does is just easily dodged. He stands on the tip of his spear and just begins to stand on Motoyasu's head, telling him that it's really not his fault, he's just out of his league at this point. Motoyasu keeps trying to hit him, but nothing is working. Nothing can even touch Naofumi. After basically Naofumi showing his pure dominance, he begins to taunt with the idea of just ending his life, ending the life of Motoyasu. Frankly, it's not like he's really needed here, pointing his hand beside Motoyasu's face, about to Hakai him. He then gets hit by a blast of magic, in which he tanks, promptly, really easily actually, swiping it away, at least the wind part of it. It's as if it was just a slight gust of wind, in which Naofumi turns toward the person who did such a thing and shakes his head. You know, you really shouldn't mess with me like that. It's not very nice. I wasn't going to kill him. He flips Motoyasu over on his face, knocking him out quickly by hitting a pressure point on the back of his neck. See, didn't kill him, was just threatening him. More fun that way. But you, on the other hand, he dashes toward the person by the name of Mind with a hand to her face. You, on the other hand, well, if I be rid of you, it wouldn't really matter much, am I right? The other three heroes need to live, but if I just poof you out of existence, then frankly, who would truly care? And as he's saying this, the king begins to come down, telling him to not make another step, that he will not kill his daughter. Oh, Miss Big Mouth is royalty. Now that just made things a little bit interesting. Actually, a lot more interesting. I guess I can't kill you, at least right now. But you better, and I say this with all graciousness, keep your eyes open for me. Don't stand too close, at least 6 feet apart. Back in my world, or back in my universe, there were some planets that were going through a little disease. Frankly, you're just as bad. Naofumi walks away with Raphtalia and Angelina, in which Raphtalia questions if that was a bit harsh, but he then says that that woman, she gives off an aura of evil, just this horrible intent, and he says that she'll be able to sense that very soon on her own, but she's still learning the ins and outs of actually observing and learning Ki. And Angelina says that she confirms this, that whoever that is, whoever her name is a horrible person. With all that said, they head back to Loot Village, and they just sleep off the night. The next day, they're actually getting up, ready to leave, but Motoyasu and Mine herself arrive with a bunch of knights, saying that Loot Village is now under the siege or in control of Motoyasu, in which Naofumi wags his finger as he walks up, saying that this will be a free place. He doesn't care about no royal decree, in which Mine points the royal decree at him, but he flicks this small energy orb, disintegrating the entire decree. See, now the decree doesn't even exist, okay? How about you leave, Mr. Spear Hero, before things get ugly once again? Motoyasu, not wanting more conflict, is tempted to actually bow out, but Mine thinks otherwise. But just as she's about to say something, well, let's just say that a shadow from the queen actually arrives and begins handing her a piece of paper, more or less infuriating Mine, forcing them to leave without much hassle at all. Frankly, Naofumi is in a power position here, and it's not like they want to play games or get into a situation they will lose indefinitely. Plus, on the other hand, Mine can't really get close to Naofumi. She does believe that he has full intention of erasing her from existence if he so chooses to do so. With all that cleaned up, Loot Village thanks him for all the help, and he says that it's really no problem that he uses this place as basically a cheap home base. He can't be having them raise the prices on them, especially hurt the good people of Loot Village. That'd be just horrible. So Naofumi then asks for at least a couple of bags. Maybe they can fly around and go to different villages and ask for maybe some donations, and maybe they'll help them out from time to time. So they actually do give them a couple bags, in which Naofumi puts on his back and Raphtalia does the same. And well, you know, Angelina begins to remind them that she kinda has infinite storage within her staff, in which Naofumi slaps himself on the head and feels kinda stupid throwing the bags into the storage that is obviously Angelina's staff. They head off and begin flying around, trying to hunt down another village and seek out, well, obviously another village, until they actually find someone walking the trails, and it's someone that begins to wave them down. It seems to be a trader. This trader asks and pleads to them to basically take him to a nearby location that he's headed to. So they decide that they'll do just that, but hopefully he's not too scared of flying. Naofumi picks him up and begins flying to the near village, spotting someone else as well that needs a lift too, so he can bring medicine to one of his family members. Naofumi helps them both out and frankly tells the guy that more or less had no money at all to not worry about it, but the trader on the other hand will need to help him out via other ways. The trader says that he will give Naofumi any information he needs, and Naofumi points toward Angelina, saying that Angelina is more of the mind of the operation, so tell her. So he does exactly that, telling her everything about trading and making money, and she's able to absorb this like a sponge. Frankly, she's really smart, and she's been kind of just guiding Naofumi this entire time throughout this world that she doesn't even know. But with all that information, they figure out and learn some new things about this little mine quarry and actually finding this abandoned alchemist tomb that had a curse seed, but unfortunately it's no longer there. He's kind of concerned about this disappearance, but he doesn't really talk about it much. His next task for some money is to deliver a herbicide to a nearby village, in which Naofumi flies over, seeing a lot of monstrous plants, arriving at the village, showing them the herbicide, and they begin to explain their story. That they learned of, or that someone learned, or Spear Hero obviously learned, of a seed from a tomb, and brought it over here to end their local famine, but when it sprouted, it came alive and began attacking the villagers. With Motoyasu completely and utterly gone, they turn, hopefully, to Naofumi. Naofumi finds it ironic that it seems like he's going to have to kill plants that were created based on a seed of some sorts. It's as if he was back at home, and Angelina tells him not to get so comfortable, and he just waves his hand, saying that he knows. He flies toward the plants, walking over, as a lot of the plants begin to try and attack him, but the aura on him himself, he actually just disintegrates every plant that attacks him, going toward the main plants and Hakkaiing that plant out of existence entirely. Unfortunately, he did get rid of the seed, and he doesn't really have much else, and unfortunately he can't really get them. But Angelina luckily does have seeds in her staff, saying that she actually has a good abundance of them, and that she kind of swiped them, because she thought it would be useful. And Naofumi says that that was definitely useful, taking all the seeds and planting them for those people, but keeping some as well, to make sure they have some left over for anybody else, or maybe even themselves. They thank them profusely, and Naofumi says that it's truly okay, that just remember that the god of destruction helped you, which is kind of ironic. But he heads out, and they head to deliver more merchandise, which is actually to a hot spring, in which they all relax and stay the night, getting whatever sleep they actually need. And Rautalia actually comes back with a giant boar, and she actually trades it in for money and gives it to Naofumi, in which he's pretty impressed, saying that she did a really good job. She's happy to see this, and as Naofumi walks by, Angelina gives him a look of are you that kinda dumb? But Naofumi doesn't even know what she's talking about as he continues to walk by. But Rautalia is satisfied with the gratitude and doesn't really question anything any further. And that's until they learn about a mysterious disease that is spreading through a nearby village. And Naofumi believes that this should be easy enough. The only problem they're gonna have is curing the villagers of this said disease. Naofumi shouldn't have a hard time disposing of the dragon that's above, but frankly, it's not gonna be as easy as that. When he begins to speak with these people in this village, they begin explaining that the sword hero Ren killed a dragon nearby, but left the body to rot instead of properly disposing of it. And frankly, this kind of pees off Naofumi, the fact that they keep messing up. It's as if this is a reoccurring thing that's just going to happen over and over and over again. He's not supposed to be the person to clean up the mortals', well, mistakes. But then he thinks for a second. That kind of is what he does. Huh. Just, this is like a smaller scale. Now this is one hell of a revelation. Naofumi is just basically talking to himself as Angelina facepalms, and Rautalia kind of laughs at the fact that he's just chatting about his job in his past life, or his past world, but then chatting about how it's similar to the one here. Even Angelina is confused at why he's just having this revelation now, but she doesn't really question it, at least not much. Naofumi then tells them that they'll handle the disposal of the said dragon, so they begin to head up the mountain, And Naofumi sees the dragon and puts his hand out and goes to Hakai it, but when he says the words, nothing happens. He's extremely confused, and Angelina points her staff at it, and it seems like the dragon is not only technically alive, or more like a zombie-like dragon, but it is currently a higher level than Naofumi. Higher level? How the hell is it a higher level? Damn, did I really slack off that much on training? Angelina says yes, and that they've been pretty preoccupied in making money, so frankly he hasn't done much training. Damn, I kinda gotta get on that, huh? Angelina agrees, but says that they should worry about the problem at hand, pointing at the dragon that is, for one, a zombie, but also standing up. Naofumi is actually shocked to see this, but Raphtalia immediately tries to go and strike it, but it seems like she does 0 damage. Naofumi begins to attack said dragon, landing crucial blows, but unfortunately he cannot just Hakai away this monster. He has to actually fight this monster. And this actually does give him a bit of a challenge, nothing too insane, but definitely a challenge he's been kind of craving recently. He begins fighting this dragon, and it almost swallows him a couple times, but every time he lands in his mouth, he's able to open his jaw once again and slap the monster, basically telling him that eating him is illegal in this fight. He continues to fight and brawl with the monster, and Naofumi's actually getting stronger as they fight, and his rage begins to swell and build up. It seems like the God of Destruction's aura is overcoming him now. He's feeling the power he once had in his other dimension, and he begins to land crucial, very brutal blows on the dragon, using multiple ki blasts, putting holes in it as if it were Swiss cheese, eventually slicing the dragon's head off and vaporizing it manually, not through a Hakai, but just through blasting it with a large ki blast. Luckily, this dragon just evaporates into the sky and just drifts off into nothingness, so the cleanup actually went pretty well. Frankly, yes, it was disposing, and the ashes of the dragon will hurt them for a little bit, but it won't be as bad as before. It will eventually just flow away in the wind, and everything will be ultimately fine. So Naofumi, Angelina, and Raphtalia head back down the mountain, and Naofumi realizes that they really should get back on, well, that training regimen they were doing initially, in which Angelina's not even next to him. She's actually flying around, gathering all the ashes of the dragon, and after she does enough of collecting, she lands back down. He questions why Angelina was even doing that, but she explains something, that he does remember what her staff does, correct? And he does remember just exactly what it does. She can now summon the dragon within her staff as a way of training. It seems like that will be probably the best way of going about training, at least for now. And she says that she even found this small shard that she absorbed, so it seems like the dragon will be at full strength within her staff. Naofumi thinks this is a great thing, especially because he can just sit in there and train against that thing over and over again, getting immensely more powerful. And once he gets stronger than that said dragon in terms of level, he'll be able to just Hakai it and just constantly kill it over and over again for that 4-hour-a-day mark. In which, well, Angelina says that is definitely beneficial, and frankly is probably the most or the best use of their time in terms of training. But with that said, they still have to head back to the capital, especially with all the time that's passed. It is coming to a point where the next wave is going to be upon them very, very soon. During this travel back to the capital, which is not very long because they're just flying around doing other stuff as well, they actually stumble across another girl, a little girl. Raphtalia goes to speak with her, asking her what's going on and why is she out here all on her own. She says that she loves hanging out with the Fallolials and that they're so nice to her, and her name is Melty. Melty becomes friends with Raphtalia pretty quickly, in which Raphtalia is more like that older sister figure, bringing Melty over and asking if they could accompany her to the capital, in which Naofumi says that's just fine. Frankly, they can just walk the rest of the way. It's not too bad to actually take a little walk instead of flying everywhere. In which Angelina agrees, saying that you would be complacent if you just flew everywhere no matter what. So they do take a nice stroll, visiting some other places on the way, eventually leading them to arriving at the capital. Naofumi brings Melty in and basically sets her off with Raphtalia, as Raphtalia follows her around, just bringing her wherever she wants to go. But as he does this, well, Motoyasu begins to try and strike him out of complete desperation? He's not exactly sure, and even questions Motoyasu why he would just try to attack him, and Motoyasu says that he will not forgive him for keeping them hostage, and why would they still be in his party if they didn't have a choice. In which Angelina does respond that technically she doesn't have a choice, but it's not because of the party, it's actually for a different reason. And Motoyasu questions why, then why would that even be? And she explains, well, I'm kind of his angel attendant. In his other world, or the other dimension, whatever this is, I'm actually bound to him. So I kind of got transferred here with him because I am bound to him. It's a bit confusing, but that's more or less the case. In which Motoyasu thinks that this is crazy, that she must be losing her mind, but she says that she's not. She has more or less infinite wisdom at this point. And Motoyasu thinks that this is just that he's being messed with. This can't even be real. But Naofumi tells him that sometimes he has to think for himself. He picks up his spear once again and says that he is, plunging it seemingly into Naofumi, but Naofumi has it just gripped at the spot of the point of that said spear. I gave you a chance. I gave you enough chances. Frankly, you're not very heroic. I don't think we need you here. I don't know, though. Should I kill you? Or should I just vaporize your weapon? And, well, Motoyasu is shocked to hear this, saying that that's not even possible. He cannot freaking Hakai his weapon. He cannot destroy it. It's indestructible. It's not a thing. But Motoyasu would be proven wrong very quickly. Naofumi grabs his weapon, gripping it tightly as it begins to disintegrate into complete destruction and ash. He lets it go and the weapon is gone. Naofumi just watches Motoyasu panic. He tries to summon the weapon back, but that weapon is not even in a plane of existence anymore. But at least that's what Naofumi thinks. That's actually not the case. This said weapon may have been destroyed and Hakai turned into energy, but the difference is in this world, when he does that to a weapon, it actually turns into something else. It changes and morphs and then recollects itself, making itself, well, worthy to be wielded by someone different, but not by someone who's been summoned. Now the weapon has been given the free will to choose what it wants to do. As Naofumi is basically conversating about why he destroyed it, that said spear comes flying down, striking the ground, and staying there, digging deep within the ground at their feet. In which Naofumi is shocked to see this, saying that that he was wrong. But Motoyasu goes to grab it, and it seems as if he cannot pick up said weapon. He cannot lift it, he cannot move it. It is nothing he can do. Motoyasu is frustrated at this, pissed that Naofumi just took away his only means of fighting. But Naofumi says that they can't really call what he does fighting, so frankly, to not worry about that anyways. But Naofumi, as he's saying this, Raphtalia and Melty approach with some royal knights. Melty explains to Naofumi that she is the heir apparent to the throne, at least of the queen, and that Malty is her sister, unfortunately. In which Naofumi says that he already assumed that much, but asks why she came back anyways. And she basically explains that she heard about the commotion, but it seems like it got handled. But why isn't the spear hero holding his spear? Oh, about that, yeah, he's no longer the spear hero. I disintegrated the weapon, then it came hurling back from the sky, and it seems like he can't pick it up. Frankly, probably for the best, he's very incompetent. As Naofumi is saying this, Raphtalia walks over to the spear and just lifts it off the ground, immediately spinning it and putting it on her back. And Naofumi is at a loss for words. What? You can do... How... Wait, I'm so confused. He looks at Angelina, and Angelina shrugs, saying that, well, she did teach her how to use other weapons, but other than that, nothing else. I mean, she has no clue how she was even able to wield that weapon. Maybe it's some pure heart thing. And Naofumi says that he swore he's heard something like that before, pure heart. And obviously Angelina steps in and says that that's actually not what he's heard. He's actually heard of worthiness, and that was a hammer. Oh, a hammer that deals with worthiness. Maybe it's like that. That's kind of weird though. I mean, it would make sense. Raphtalia would be worthy. But as they continue this conversation, well, Motoyasu is pissed, going to actually strike Raphtalia, but she immediately just kicks him away like it was nothing at all. Well, Naofumi kind of just shrugs and looks to see that, well, that may become a problem. It seems like Raphtalia may not be able to be part of his party anymore. He begins to put them both into, obviously, the staff, and they begin training, and it seems like they're not gaining experience points at all. And that is going to be a problem. So they come out of the staff, and Naofumi makes this basically apparently clear that unfortunately they cannot be a team anymore. He apologizes and says that she will be a crucial part to defeating all the waves, and that he has the utmost trust in her. In which she bows toward him and thanks him for everything, and says that she promises that she will make him proud and that she will do her best. But before she leaves, she does ask if she can try to train within the staff by herself, and Naofumi go away for a little bit and see if that would work. In which she does, but unfortunately that doesn't work either. Well, Angelina is basically an attachment or part of Naofumi, so that necessarily wouldn't work. So unfortunately that way of training is now out of the way for Raphtalia. But with that said, Raphtalia heads off and begins to try to find her own ways of training before this wave comes. Naofumi, on the other hand, is kind of just looking at Motoyasu, saying that he really can't do anything about it. It seems like Raphtalia is a lot stronger than him and a lot more capable in various ways. So Naofumi just begins to head off toward Elhard, and Melty is kind of chuckling at the fact that they kind of just got put in their place very quickly, especially with people like, well, Motoyasu and Malty, that they're so egotistical, and the fact that it ended like this was kind of poetry. Naofumi and Angelina head to Elhard and begin speaking about everything that has occurred, get some upgrades on their armor and everything like that, and Naofumi is kind of ready for this next wave, but he does want to do some minor training and leveling up. But with that said though, Angelina does say that it would be for the best to kinda get someone else in their party. Naofumi, on the other hand, says that they really don't have that much time before this next wave, so he'll just spend it training. But after the wave, he'll consider getting somebody in his party. That's if he really needs one. Frankly, he shouldn't need one after all the training he's going to do. So, that's exactly what he does. He uses the rest of the time to level up as much as he possibly can. With only 48 hours left before this next wave, he takes 8 out of the 48 hours to train in Angelina's staff. Doing all of this, he sets himself up at a really, really high level. Frankly, he's pretty good off, and he's practically mastered and got back most, if not all, of his strength, and he's sitting at a level of about 80. Being at a level of 80, he believes that this next wave will be mostly easy until the wave then begins, and frankly, he's right. He begins to fight all the monsters at Loot Village, but that is easy as he's ever seen, and then he decides to head toward where the main boss is about after an hour of waiting, because he thought maybe the other heroes would be able to handle it. And he sees Raphtalia there as well, trying to explain to them that she knows how to activate this boss, but they're refusing to listen, and every time she goes to make a move, it's as if they're rejecting it, like they're forcing her to not be able to do so. And he walks over and then reveals the boss himself and says that she was right, that the shadow of the Dutchman was the way of getting it. He walks up to the Soul Eater, vaporizing it using a Hakai, And the other 3 heroes, well, obviously Raftalia now in the place of Motoyasu, sees how high of a level Naofumi currently is at this point. Naofumi is leagues above everybody else and leagues above these so-called boss monsters. That's until another one of those boss monsters arrives out of nowhere. This boss is the same one that they just fought, the Soul Eater, but this time it's killed by a woman by the name of Glass. A woman wearing a black kimono and wielding 2 twin-bladed war fans. The real and, well, the final boss of this wave has just arrived. This Raven Invader is ready to strike Naofumi, but when she goes to actually strike him, she's held in place. How? Well, she looks around and sees that there's no way that they held her in place, like she's not even being touched. But Naofumi did kind of touch her on the shoulder and put her into a god bind, and is holding her there. Now you are interesting, madam. Who are you? You're not part of this world, I assume. Maybe from a world like this. I'm not so sure. She responds with a how would you even know that she's just from the wave, in which Naofumi shakes his head. There's no way you're just from the wave, it's not that simple. You seem to have an overarching goal, am I right? But unfortunately that goal needs to stop here, and just like the other boss monsters, you'll have to die here. He points his hand at her and basically tells her to admit what's going on, or he'll just proceed to kill her and go along with killing the rest of the people that are going to try and invade this world, in which she reveals that she is here to kill the heroes, in which Naofumi finds this interesting. But obviously the other boss monsters are here to do the same, that she'll need to be more specific, and she says that she is a hero from another world, and that she is here to kill the other heroes that are present here to save her world, in which Naofumi says that that's a good girl, and that he's happy that she told the entire truth. He lets her go of the god bind and says that she has a chance in this. Don't fight, you don't need to come back, but if you do, just know that, well, I'll have to kill you. He explains that feel free to come visit and come talk, and whatever they have going on in their little world, well, let's just say that the god of destruction can help out. But he needs to know what's going on. Naofumi isn't given much information, as Glass basically travels back into the wave and says that she will definitely be back. But she, even herself, does not know under what regard. Frankly, this person, whoever he is far out of her league. After it's all said and done though, Naofumi actually gets called back to the kingdom, in which the king questions what's even going on and how he got so strong, in which Naofumi is kind of shrugging, saying that, well, he doesn't really need to tell them anything. And the only reason why he's actually kind of alive right now is because of the respect he has for his youngest daughter. And, well, the king takes this as a threat, in which he says that he'll do anything to make sure he's dead, but Naofumi is in front of him immediately, saying that he can definitely try, but he'd die far quicker than what Naofumi would. Naofumi reminds him who he's messing with, completely disintegrating his chair, not including, well, the king that's sitting on it, and says to not mess with him ever again, or else. And the first death isn't even going to be him, it's going to be his oldest daughter. He walks away and leaves with Angelina, as Angelina reminds him that they should go get a new party member, but he asks do they really need one, at least at the level that Naofumi's at, in which Angelina estimates that probably not, but having other people around is a good idea. He nods and says that maybe it is, but honestly having others around that aren't on his level and having to level them up on his own once again will not be the most beneficial or not be a good, well, time consumer. so he decides to just hang out with who he has. He then heads off and decides that he's going to head off to somewhere by the name of Shield Frieden. He's heard through the grapevine that there are other countries he wants to visit over there. And while he's doing this, he sees someone fly by. It's actually Raphtalia. She's headed somewhere else, actually in the direction of what seems to be Shield Frieden, but it seems like she has something else in mind, in which Angelina asks if he wants to just check in on her, but he says that he can just check in on her through the, obviously, Angelina's staff. He zooms off towards Shield Frieden and even goes to meet with the nobleman over there. He speaks with them and asks about the other countries, in which it is confirmed that the other waves do arrive there as well, in which Naofumi says that in terms of power, would be easily able to defeat the rest of the waves, at least in every single country, as long as the other people are alive. He's not so sure if all the rest of them are dead, but he should be sitting around a good, manageable power. And that his protege, you could call her, Raphtalia, is frankly at a power that is probably suitable above a lot of the other heroes, or at least the other ones that even existed at one point, and that she could protect probably her own country on her own. In which they're happy to hear this, and they actually talk about this girl Raphtalia, asking what she's like, and Naofumi says that she is a demi-human, in which they're shocked to hear this, saying that she'd be perfect for Shield Frieden, or Siltveld, but frankly, they say that Shield Frieden is a lot better place for demi-humans in their opinion. And obviously Naofumi will make sure to take this to heart. But with that said, he has some more business to attend to as he goes from country to country speaking with everybody. But what he doesn't know what's actually occurring is that the Three Heroes Church is finally making their move. While Naofumi is out and about talking with various other countries, the Three Heroes Church is about to execute their master plan, and when he just arrives back into Melremark, he sees a giant cathedral. A giant cathedral that seems to have captured Motoyasu, Raphtalia, Ren, and Itsuki. He sees this and goes flying toward it, and sees tons and tons of people seemingly giving their energy, their power to this so-called place. Naofumi shakes his head and walks through the cathedral as if nothing even existed right there. He walks through as he sees everybody trying to fight the Pope, but Raphtalia doing the most damage, and substantially she is the strongest, at least at the moment. The Pope begins to try and strike them down, but then just as he's doing this, someone appears in front of him standing on the weapon he's using. You know, it's not very nice to attack people that were supposedly on your side. At least that's what I thought until you tried to kill everybody. The Pope realizes that the person in front of him is Naofumi, the person they were waiting for to leave, to make sure that he was out of the way for now so he wouldn't have to deal with him. This isn't good. What is he going to? Just as he begins to say this, the weapon that is in his hands begins to disappear, evaporate, get destroyed into ashes, and he begins to basically shake uncontrollably, terrified. Naofumi grabs him by the neck. You know, playing around with a god is definitely not the best idea. Naofumi throws him to the side and points a hand at him. Well, Mr. Pope, whatever god that you think exists up there, I hope they treat you properly. Hakai. The Pope begins to disintegrate into nothingness, and his cathedral begins to collapse. Ren and Itsuki are shocked to see what just occurred. Motoyasu basically on the bridge of death, staring at Naofumi, pissed, seeing how strong he's gotten, and Raphtalia happy to see that Naofumi's there and was able to help them. Raphtalia runs over and gives him a hug, and Naofumi pats her on the head, saying that she did a good job and apologizes that he wasn't here sooner. Of course, the battle is won, and actually all the other followers were gathered up by the queen's forces, in which actually turned out to be definitely a good event that occurred. Everything went pretty smoothly overall, but just as Naofumi is leaving, the queen informs him of everything that's going to occur, in which Naofumi doesn't really care, do as she wishes with the king and her daughter, but make sure that they are, well, knowing of what they did wrong. Not only that, they're captured and put away for a good while. You cannot have them walking around with the power they have and the influence they have. It won't make sense, and frankly, they'll just run into the same issue. But Naofumi has to deal with another potential greeting. She's confused. The queen asks what is he talking about, and he says that he's not even sure. He flies with Angelina, and Angelina asks if he sensed that as well, as they land in a nearby forest. While they land, someone does approach them. It seems like it's a woman or a girl with wings, and she is known as the Filolio Queen, other known as Vittoria. Vittoria introduces herself, saying that she's pretty impressed by all the stuff Naofumi has done, and he shrugs, saying that is just the duty of a god, in which she's confused to hear and asks him if he truly thinks he's a god, in which Angelina confirms that he is a god, or at least was one in his other dimension, and frankly, in this dimension, he's practically on the level of godhood anyways. And Naofumi's shocked. Wow, did you just compliment me, Angelina? I will never do it again, sir. Oh, that's not what I was asking for. Hurtful. Well, with that said though, Miss Vittoria, I know we're all in a joking manner at the moment, but I am a god. And actually more specifically the god of destruction. And I guess in this world is more the legendary destruction hero, but I am the god of destruction, or was the god of destruction. She is shocked to hear this, but this does explain everything that he's able to do. It feels like an anomaly, but it's frankly not. He's able to do some drastic things, and no one else would have been able to do such a thing. And look at his level. He's on a whole different stratosphere in terms of strength. And Vittoria thanks him for all the help and does ask for his help with the other countries. He says, of course, that he doesn't mind helping, and he actually has talked to all the countries, in which she says that that's how she's heard of him, mostly from the other countries, in which he's glad to hear that they have him in high regard. But with that said, he actually does need to head back to the kingdom and speak with the Queen of Melremark about what's going to happen in the near future. Well, Vittoria nods and basically bids him farewell and says that she hopes to see him again, but on really good terms, where the world isn't crumbling to pieces. Yes, I do wish that too, Miss Vittoria. They head off and arrive back at the kingdom, in which the queen explains that in a couple days, they'll have a meeting with the four heroes, in which he kind of laughs, saying that it is ironic to have Raphtalia as one of the heroes, isn't it, Angelina? And Angelina says that it is a bit ironic, but it is definitely more fitting, especially when considering who was the hero before her. And the queen has heard about everything that's occurred, and it's definitely something odd, something that the god of destruction, or the legendary destruction hero. It's odd that he's able to do such a thing, evaporate or destroy one of the weapons and make it open to basically the weapon to choose, as if it was rebirth or reincarnated. And he doesn't really know how it works either, but he says that he'll see her in a couple days to talk about this so-called meeting of some sorts. A couple days pass, and finally that meeting happens, in which Motoyasu forces his way in, but Naofumi says that he is no longer a hero, so he is not allowed to be in this Four Heroes Council meeting. But he argues, saying that Angelina is there, but Angelina says that she is the attendant of, well, the legendary destruction hero, and she does withhold a lot of his powers within her staff. And, well, Naofumi backs her up, saying that this is very true, in which Motoyasu is pulled out by a couple knights. The conversation then begins to divulge into how Naofumi got so strong. Same thing with Raphtalia, but it's really quickly explained. Naofumi says that there's a special, basically, staff that he has, well, more like Angelina has, that he uses to train. They ask if they can use it as well, but that has already been tested. Raphtalia cannot use it anymore, that she is a wielder of one of the weapons. Maybe it has something to do with her wielding the spear, as if it still takes on the properties of the legendary weapons. He's not so sure, but frankly, he doesn't really think too much about it because it seems like she got pretty strong on her own. But it seems like they're lacking the motive to do so. They take offense to this and kind of get mad, saying that they're not here to be judged, but Naofumi says that that is exactly why they are here. They are here to be judged, if they're worth even keeping around. In which the queen agrees that that is the case. That if they're not worthy of basically these weapons, maybe they should just find two others that are. In which Naofumi nods, and, well, it seems like Ren and Itsuki are ready to listen to every word they're going to speak. The conversation basically divulges into ways that Naofumi got stronger, even excluding the whole staff thing. Not only that, there's various ways to get stronger, and using all of them is the most beneficial way of going about it. Techniques, upgrading your weapon, skills, everything you can think of, you need to level them all up. Not just one thing is going to make you strong. And he makes that very apparent, in which they all agree. Even if it does take Ren and Itsuki some time to actually fully agree with what's going on. But with that said, they basically all decide that they need to focus up and try to train exactly how Naofumi is saying, and Raphtalia was already doing so. The queen has some good news though, that there is basically a Kalmyra archipelago event that is going to happen. That this event is actually going to give bonus experience points to everybody that goes. So Naofumi thinks that this is a great idea and asks when they're going to leave, and she says in the near morning. And he says that that is a great idea and he'll just fly over. Raphtalia says she'll do the same, and obviously Angelina will do the same as well. So it's all set in stone. And it's now time for, once the next morning arrives, to head off to Kalmyra. When they arrive at Kalmyra, which obviously Naofumi, Angelina, and Raphtalia are there a lot sooner, they decide to section out the area, and they go to the opposite ends so that they can train. Naofumi takes most of the day training, killing as much things as possible, but also honing various other skills that he really didn't know he could even have as this leveling system, or with this leveling system. But he does personally feel like this wave, or at least the one that's coming up in the next month or so, will be kind of a wash. It's not going to really matter much, and he could take a nap if he really wanted to and be just fine. In which Angelina does say to not get complacent, and Naofumi agrees to this and continues leveling up. But after some time, in about a day or two, they do decide that maybe it is good to take a break, in which Naofumi decides to go take a dip in the water, and so does Angelina. They go swimming through the water, eventually seeing something odd, an odd-looking temple, and when they approach it, it actually is a place where the Dragon Hourglass, or one of the Dragon Hourglasses, actually resides. And they go in and check it out to see that the next wave is actually bound for Kalmyra in 48 hours. This isn't the best thing that they've definitely seen all day, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. He goes and tells the queen about this, in which she talks about bringing naval fleet, in which they do just that, amassing a large amount of ships, and they all sail in ready to go, except for Naofumi, Raphtalia, and Angelina are floating overhead, flying in. Seeing another ship with two adventurers, he looks at them and gets an odd feeling around them and feels as if there's going to be a larger fight, one that even subsides past just glass. Frankly, glass was easy, but he wonders if these two intruders are going to be strong as well. But even with that said, the wave begins, and all of these monsters begin to swim about. Naofumi, not wanting to waste any time, stands above it all and hakais every last one of the monsters, killing them all in one foul swoop. But this is not the end. But Naofumi knows this and even approaches the ship with the two others on it and asks what their next move is. And they are stunned. They don't even know what to say. He wiped out a wave at a flick of his wrist. How are they supposed to beat him? Glass was not kidding. And they should have taken this a little bit more seriously. Especially Lark is frustrated with himself that he didn't. And Naofumi asks them again, so, how would you like to go on with this? You here to kill me or kill us? Or we can chat about it and see what we can do. But frankly, you are not saving your world at the expense of my own. I have a duty to this world, which sucks because it's nowhere near as big as my other universe. But so be it. Now, let's speak about it. Would you like to try your hand at me? Or would you like to maybe figure something out? In which Lark feels like there is no other choice, that this person is just giving them an ultimatum. And the only way they're even getting out of this alive is based on the graces of this person, based off the graces of the god of destruction. Because at the end of the day, well, Naofumi is far beyond any so-called wave at this moment, and far beyond these other heroes from this other world. Because this is exactly what happens when you bring a god, the god of destruction, and make him the legendary destruction hero. But the real question is, will Naofumi find it in his heart to forgive these people that were going to attempt assassination? Will he find it in his heart to actually help everybody around him? Well, he wouldn't have normally have done this, because judging his moral level of his universe is what mattered to him. But now that he had to judge, at least based on what he believed to be the best choice of action for his world and many others, how will he decide this fate? The fate of the other people, which would include their world as well? Well, you would have to find out another time, because that is for another day and another story, in which may or may not happen. But as I say always, I hope y'all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below any suggestions you have for future what ifs, and well, future Naofumi what ifs, Tundra what ifs, JJK what ifs, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And like I said, hope y'all enjoyed. And if y'all didn't expect this to be overpowered, I made it pretty blatantly obvious that it was going to be overpowered. Frankly, when you put Naofumi as the legendary destruction hero, which a lot of you wanted, the god of destruction, a god of destruction-esque Naofumi, there's really no way around him not being overpowered or not even close to balanced. So I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later. I don't wanna waste what's